afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. The start of a new season is upon us. As with any seasonal transition, the arrival of fall is marked by changes. The weather, the daylight, and of course, the trees. Throughout history and literature, trees are a symbol of life. They clean the air we breathe and they help filter the water we drink, particularly in urban areas. Earlier this year, Across the Fence spoke with the arborist in Burlington about the health and development of the city's trees.
We're fortunate here in Burlington to have quite an awesome urban forest, in my opinion. I spent a number of years here as city arborist, and virtually when I started in 1980-ish, we had quite a depleted urban forestry in the aftermath of Dutch elm disease. So we had a pretty extensive replanting program spearheaded by our mayor at the time, Bernie Sanders. And we planted quite a few trees with volunteers over the years to get our urban forests back, built back up again, and diversifying our trees and hitting the neighborhoods, the main streets. We are not caught up, but we're a whole lot better off than we were. We have about 12,000 trees between our streets, parks, cemeteries, bike path, and public ways in Burlington. I think the biggest benefit is the pleasure it brings to the people that live in Burlington and visit Burlington, and they enjoy the greenery on the streets, a sense of just comfort. And they also understand the other benefits as well, as far as cleaning our air, cooling our streets and our buildings. And the latest and really big one now is helping stormwater management with how the trees will catch the rain in the canopy and also through the root systems and helping catch and capture that water before it gets into our lake. It's been interesting and fascinating and awesome for me to watch the development of Burlington over the years I've been here. And one of those is Waterfront Park. The city a number of years ago bought this property known as the Urban Reserve and the Waterfront, and this is the first real development piece of that property. And it started in 85, 86 in the vision to bring the old Burlington Yacht Club, which is now the Burlington Boathouse, back to Burlington's waterfront, and then the vision of this park, and the first park developed right here on the waterfront, which has just been an awesome spot over the years, and it gets used a lot, to say the least. It's always booked for events down here. And being involved with the development of this was quite interesting to me at the time, as the whole process, working with the residents in the city, the Act 250 folks, to develop this, because it was a commercial industrial site that the city had the vision to bring it back and make it a usable park space and public space for the citizens and visitors of Burlington. So there really was not a lot here at the time. Railroad tracks, very industrial, and we had the vision to create this park and design it. And of course, my involvement with that design was working with the landscape architects to what do we put for trees here, how do we space them, and going through that process was interesting because the buildings on the east side of the park with those property owners didn't want the vision of the lake and the Adirondacks blocked, which made a lot of sense. So in choosing and selecting the trees, one thing that we did is we had view corridors between them so that people could actually have a vision of the lake. And we matched that up with the silver lindens that are on the bike path now, and the planting beds with the calorie pears that are in there, along with the rhododendrons, the purple rhododendrons. The bike path was part of the Rails to Trails years ago where the railroad tracks were abandoned and they're now being used for multi-use paths. And that's one of the beautiful things about Burlington is we have this wonderful bike path for 8 miles along the waterfront. And we are in the process now of upgrading that and renovating the bike path. My hope is to see Burlington's urban forest grow, obviously, in the future and increase in canopy coverage. We're working on a lot of things. We're working on reducing our impervious surfaces in Burlington, and you do that by adding green space, adding trees, and making it a more green and livable city. So my hope is to see it continue and just get better.
Our thanks to City Arborist Warren Spinner for that perspective on the city's trees and parks. Our next segment takes us to one of the busiest research facilities in the state. When it comes to agricultural research, most farmers want to see for themselves whether a new crop or a new practice is right for their farm business. That's where Borderview Farm in Alburgh comes in. As Rebecca Gollin tells us, Borderview is a place where scientists and farmers work together to provide answers to real-world problems.
Vermont farmers are known for their hard work, resourcefulness, and innovation. That innovation has to start somewhere, and more often than not, it starts right here, at Borderview Farm. When Across the Fence first visited Borderview in 1997, it had just been named Vermont Dairy Farm of the Year.
Today we've come to Grand Isle County to the town of Alburgh, Vermont, to meet Roger and Claire Rainville and their family, the Vermont Dairy Farmers of the Year. The Rainville farm is as far north as you can go in Vermont, and their croplands lie along the Canadian border.
We looked at 35 different farms before we settled on this one here. One of the main reasons was the excellent land, and we knew that with a good land base we could produce crops and we could really hopefully be successful.
Rainville expanded into biodiesel, experimenting with growing seed oil crops for on-farm fuel and using the byproducts to feed the cows. He also began working with UVM agronomist Heather Darby, installing several small plots around the farm for Darby's research.
And you can see what happens as the planting dates get later and later.
When I first started at the University of Vermont Extension, I didn't really have a place to conduct replicated research, which usually means small plots, small equipment, more time. And I came to the Rainvilles and Borderview Farm because I knew how committed they were to UVM extension.
She suggested maybe we try doing a couple little research plots, and we jokingly said, that it would be neat to have an on-farm research facility, and we started out with, a half a dozen little research plots.
These days, the cows are gone, but the farm is as active as ever. Since those first few plots, Borderview has become a hub of experimentation, with around 4,000 research plots.
This research lab that we have here at Borderview Farm allows us to look at those different practices, unique practices, understand how they work and fit here, and then introduce them to the farming community.
Welcome again to Borderview Research Farm, owned by Roger and Claire Rainville.
One way that Darby and her team introduce farmers to the research at Borderview is to invite them to the farm to see it in action at their annual Crop and Soil Field Day.
If you guys make the trip to Empire Farm Show in New York, you won't see this there.
Across the Fence caught up with Darby and some attendees last summer. The focus of that day was innovation.
We're looking at innovations such as variable rate manure spreaders that allow farmers to actually type in exactly how much manure should be applied to that field to minimize any chances for runoff or over fertilization. We're looking at innovative equipment that helps us seed cover crops into growing fields of corn to reduce erosion and improve crop yields. And we're looking at really innovative practices with iPhone apps and drones that help us monitor the practices we're putting into place and how they impact the bottom line, both how they impact the environment and how they impact our pocketbook.
Using innovation to help their bottom line is nothing new for farmers. What is new is the recent legislation regarding water quality and reducing stormwater runoff to Vermont's lakes and streams.
Farmers are being approached by the state, the Department of Ag, and they're being asked to kind of step it up almost. And I think that farmers are actually rising to that attention. They're getting a lot of education at this point in time, but there's still a lot of things that need to be done.
Darlene Reynolds is the chair of the Franklin Grand Isle Farmers Watershed Alliance. The group works with farmers, offering education and monetary assistance to help implement water quality measures. As a dairy farmer herself, Reynolds knows the risks that come with the business.
Well, I think when it comes to any type of change that you want to make on your business, you have to look at it at two aspects. One, for water quality, and two, is it going to be economically viable for that dairy farmer? So when you're asking them to change the way that they manage their crops necessarily, you know that you want them to change their crops in order to improve water quality, but at the same time, they still need those crops to feed their animals every single year, and if those crops don't exist, then that could very well put them out of business.
With so much riding on every decision, farmers need to know that new techniques will be successful. That's why seeing the research in action at Borderview is so important.
We really try to get these practices to a point where farmers can just take them basically right from our research farm and implement them on their own farms. And coming here and actually seeing is part of the process. So seeing is believing.
Farmers around the region have implemented practices that they first saw here.
The idea of cover cropping has become like this small idea, especially from Heather Darby, into this expanded huge idea, and the amount of acreage that the Farmers Watershed Alliance was able to do just a few years ago, and it's only expanded since then. I think crop rotation has been something that farmers have seen that's really worked and helps the soils out, and I think there's a lot of farmers doing that. And I think the whole idea of no-till cropping has become such a huge factor, especially with this past season, with being such a wet season. That option was great for farmers because they didn't have to till the land.
Everybody has got a stake in cleaning up the waters and taking responsibility for a great environment.
As a dairy veterinarian for over 40 years in the northwest corner of the state, Kent Henderson is familiar with the issues farmers can face when trying to improve the environment and meeting the new state regulations. Henderson is part of the organization Friends of Northern Lake Champlain, which is dedicated to reducing nutrient runoff. He says that while the projects here at Borderview have introduced farmers to new techniques of reducing runoff, it's not just farmers that benefit from this information.
Soil conservation and water and improving water quality go hand in hand. One of the sources of runoff is from fields that could use better conservation methods that are being taught today. That doesn't mean that only farms can benefit from this knowledge. There are many home gardeners here, vegetable growers, and that can add to these things. The reason that this is so important is Vermont is known for its environmental responsibility, being a great, clean place to live. It's what draws people to live in Vermont and the culture of being in Vermont. Work like this just shows that farmers want to be here too.
We're not done by a long shot as far as water quality. It's going to be on everybody's plate. I mean, not just farmers, but everybody. We've always said it's our water, it's our lake, it's not mine, it's not yours. So we all have to play our own special role in doing what we can. And my hope has always been is that we cannot point fingers anymore, that we can just do what we can on our part. If we have an issue, then my hope is that we fix those issues the best we can. And it doesn't mean you have to be a farmer to do that. We all have small roles to play, and if we all implement these small roles, then we're going to have big success.
And one of the things that we're really advocating for is better crop rotations. Okay, you can see it right there. Please walk in there and look. And then walk in here.
bringing innovation to farmers and their communities. UVM Extension and Borderview Farm are sowing the seeds of success and helping lead the way to cleaner water and a better environment for all Vermonters. In Alburgh, I'm Rebecca Gollin with Across the Fence.
Thanks, Rebecca, and thank you for joining us. That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. I'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.